She can let herself in. Change my name. Good morning. Did we skip something? That seemed awfully fast.
Well, Jared's sermon was a little short. And, I don't know. It was kind of short. It's not even 20 after. So, hi, Kay.
Hi, Kay.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Thank you. For some reason, I have stable internet today.
Hey.
I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, don't jinx it. No. Hi, Jane.
Well, that was a fun service.
Yeah.
I always love it when people get the giggles in the middle of the service. It kind of helps the mood along.
And I'm glad he mentioned Andrea Gorman. That was great.
Yes.
Her poem.
Yes.
Good to see everyone.
See you, Jane.
Thank you.
All right, so am I understanding right, Susan? I don't close out of this meeting because it continues on to be the practice meeting. Is that correct?
That's
okay.
Right.
But I picked up on that. Remind me. It's so easy just to click, isn't it? End meeting for all.
And you have his paper to show, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Morning.
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 Good morning, everybody.
Good
morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Dick. And Jim. Good morning.
Good morning.
I like these bigger groups. It's fun now that we don't have two separate classes, right? We're seeing a lot of folks for a while. After gratitude, we'll be doing spiritual journeys. Some of y'all remember that, the spiritual journeys class we did a couple years ago, where different parishioners kind of shared things they'd gone through in their journey and how they ended up at St. Andrews. But Jim, you were one of them. Yeah. That was a great series. So we're going to be doing that again after Lent. We'll see if we can get Father Jared to do one of the talks.
Is that Jackie in Santa Monica?
Good morning, Jim. How and everybody else? How are y'all?
Good. Good to see you. Is it 35 degrees there and blowing hard?
It's 50 this morning. We had a little, yeah, I live at a low elevation. So we had a good amount of snow up in the mountains yesterday. It's good. Okay.
Where do you live?
I live in Santa Monica.
Oh, okay.
I could be more specific if you want to know, but
I know where Santa Monica is.
Yeah, you know where. Well, actually, you know, if you get on Route 66 and head west,
don't even have to turn.
Yeah, that's where it ends. It's and I-10 angles up, so I'm about 1.5 miles south of I-10 where it ends out here.
Okay.
It's a sweet place to be.
I bet.
I say gratitude every day.
Is that sort of close to Venice?
Yeah. Venice is the next, and I'm on the south side of Santa Monica. Santa Monica is only about 2 or 3 miles square, but you head south in my neighborhood about 1/2 mile, and it's the city limit between that and Venice.
Yeah.
So,
That's Great
kind of
area.
up on high ground here.
Okay.
There's the little old Santa Monica Airport, which is where Douglas Aircraft originally got started.
Mm.
And then you can look out and, you know, see some views looking to the south off of the bluff. And then there's the ocean.
Yeah, there's the ocean.
There's a reason millions and millions of people live here. And I have a job.
Yeah.
I remember when I first went to California in the summer, I thought the sun feels good. That's
Yeah.
it feels good.
What kind of work do you do?
I work for the VA. The VA has had a long-standing interdisciplinary quality improvement project. So there's teams of folks like me who are more academic that work with the clinical folks to do their programs to implement new stuff and put new processes of care in place and things like that. It's impressive. I mean, my job, not so much, but what the VA does as a system is, that's the part that doesn't get the publicity as much, but but it's a good example of how you can actually do quality improvement in a large system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to be part of it.
Good.
It was worth leaving Texas for a while. I still get real homesick.
You need barbecue.
Yes, ma'am. Don't get me started. They do a nice barbecue out here, but it's different. Yeah, it's
Y'all get Korean barbecue? I've recently gotten interested in Korean food, and I think they have some pretty good Korean barbecue, right?
Yeah. Mary Louise, hello.
Hi, Jackie.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay, and you?
I'm fine.
Good. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Mary Louise, are you back in Amarillo or still in Taos?
I'm in Amarillo. Jim is in Taos. I had the crud, and so I stayed home. I got tested. I don't have COVID.
Oh, good.
Can I help you?
How are y'all?
Just the crud.
Yep. Just the cold.
Good to see you again, Mary. It's been a while.
It has. It's nice to see you.
Damn, I wish we could all be sitting around in the parish hall eating some breakfast and.
Oh, I wish that too. That's Mary Louise.
Bill used to go for the hash browns, he told me. He said, I'm only here because of the hash browns.
How do I get the view of everybody? At this point, just the speaker is big and everybody else little tiny pictures.
See if you can go to view, Dorothy.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
You can click over your picture or the picture, and there's some options there. You want like gallery view?
Gallery view. I see. Thank you, Margie.
There you go.
Boy, we have a crowd this morning. Good.
2 pages worth.
Oh, really? I've got 25 on my phone also, couldn't I?
We have 33 right now. Let's see. 4. And Father Jared should be here shortly, anytime. I don't think he's here yet. So this is for those of you who are new or just joining this class, this is our 3rd class session on gratitude led by Father Jared that we're doing during Epiphany. And then we'll have a little bitty acknowledgement of Lent. I think Father Jared and others have joked we've already had a lot of Lent this year, haven't we? Just a little bit of Lent. and
a long time of Lent.
A long Lent.
And then I think we're going to resume the Bible study, right, Susan? We'll be resuming the Bible study after Lent, and then we're going to do spiritual journeys to hear from different parishioners. So that's after Lent.
We got to talk Mardi Gras before we talk Lent, though.
Yeah, there you go. In Mobile, which had the first Mardi Gras because it was French, and New Orleans. So I know all about Mardi Gras.
Maybe those youth that are spinning pancakes into our cars can throw some beads in with it.
Yeah, some pancake. Did y'all hear that about the Shrove Tuesday pancakes? Yeah.
It's going to be drive-through.
On a stick.
You order, you get your bacon and your pancake driving through, and then you when you sign up for that, you then you also can give money for the youth group. So
It'll be like Frisbee pancakes.
yes. Oh my gosh, so funny.
Well, we've been doing drive-through communion, so why not drive-through pancakes? It works.
That's right.
She's got her hair all pulled back.
Okay.
Dorothy, how's Julie?
Oh, she is fine. She's they're still teaching from home, so she's getting accustomed to it so that she really says it's more fun than it was during the spring semester when they were online. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Good. Jackie and Julie were St. Andrew's compatriots, the same age, and went through EYC and Sunday schools and the whole.
And the nursery, since the nursery, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. Jackie was one of our first female acolytes.
Oh.
Me and Kristen Conley, yep.
Right.
Yeah, Bishop Quarterman finally agreed.
Right. And Julie was in, we had a junior altar guild then.
Yeah.
And she was altar guild, but they had a good EYC group.
Yeah.
You would have been skiing about now.
Yes, ma'am.
Mary Louise would have been there too.
Right, right.
Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Alina Jennings. If you scroll down, you'll see she's joined us. She's, I'm glad to say, has joined our small group sessions and is going through that process with us. So welcome, Alina.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Wonderful. Welcome.
I saw Father Jared there.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
There he is.
Hey, y'all.
Yeah, there he is.
Hi.
How's it going?
Great sermon.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
Do you know about Portlandia, Father Jared? The show Portlandia?
Is that with the guy from SNL? Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I haven't really watched it, but I know what you're talking about.
Well, they had baseball tryouts in Portland. They thought that would help their city, and they called their team the Thinkers, and this was their logo.
Perfect. Perfect. Yep. That's what my dad would always say. And then he creates scenarios for me in the front yard when we were throwing the ball. You know, you got a guy on first, a guy on third. It's a da-da-da-da, you know. He loved the game. I love the game too. I gave it up when I got to high school. I became one of those artsy fartsy kids instead. So
yeah, he was too.
Well, I'm just going to kind of scan through. We got 3 pages of folks here. I just kind of want to see who's with us this morning. All right, very cool. Appreciate y'all being a part of this. Well, let's go ahead and open up with a word of prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also
with you.
O God, in this life, grant us knowledge of your truth, and in the life to come, peace everlasting. All this we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, there's a few things I want to do before we jump into our third lesson here in the gratitude series. I hope y'all found it enriching and helpful. But first, I wanted to, you know, I'm holding this up every week. It doesn't have to be this. This is just a gratitude journal that got me started on this journey a few years back. And it's, as I've said, but in case you're new this week, just jumping in, this is a gratitude journal from the teachings of Brother David Steindl-Rast, who is a Trappist monk here in the United States, who spent a lot of his life talking about gratitude, practicing gratitude, researching gratitude. And the whole book is full of like prompts of his, you know, quotations from him, but you could also use it just as a way to write down every day things you're grateful for. And so I wanted to kind of survey the crew here. The first week we talked about maybe the possibility of being intentional, all of us being intentional about every day, finding a space in which you can write, you know, 3, 4, 5 things you're grateful for that day. And I just wanted to open it up to y'all to see if anybody's been able to do that and what that experience has been like, and how you found that, you know, helpful or challenging or all the above.
Well, I wanted to say that Judy Perriman contacted me and said, let's be gratitude partners. And so we're on Mondays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock, we text each other our gratitudes. So
oh, that's great, Susan.
It's really been fun.
That is great. Good deal. Thanks for sharing.
You have to wing it.
Yeah, I kept the journal, and here's my book.
Nice. Good deal.
Have anywhere from 2 to 5 things a day, and it sure is kind of refreshing. It kind of cleanses you out. It kind of makes you really appreciate everything that you got going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. How about one other person? Is there a third person out there that's like to share what this has been like for them, the practice of gratitude or journaling?
Well, I read the day by day thing, and at the bottom every morning, I write down something I'm grateful for.
Perfect. That's wonderful. That's awesome.
Let me put my oar in the water.
Please.
Listen, the thing I'm most grateful for in my whole life is finding Dorothy.
Oh,
That's awesome.
That's good, because we've been stuck in this house together now since March.
Oh my goodness.
What did he say?
I love it.
You know, I think we're all grateful for Dorothy. We're all grateful that you found Dorothy.
We're getting a lot of feedback. Do you have yours? Did you?
All right. Well, thanks for sharing, y'all. And I appreciate y'all opening up about that. And Marietta, I love those day by days too. What they've started doing lately with the throwbacks, you know, we get to read something from like the 40s or the 50s. I love that. And I just wish we knew who wrote it. Like I always want their names there. I'm like, man, who wrote those words? I want to know. But anyway,
well,
good.
Sometimes what surprises me is that it really could just be written today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, one of the things I've loved about this is kind of throughout the week, in between our lessons on gratitude here, is several of you have shared stories with me and talked about experiences in your life in which gratitude has become this grounding presence or something. And Margie shared a couple of things with me this week, and I asked if she'd be willing to just talk briefly about that, the way Mildred and Susan did last week. So Margie, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Father Jared. I have a son who has some serious illnesses he's had for his whole life, primarily mental health related. And he's what's known as treatment resistant, because a lot of people with mental health conditions can recover and do great, right? We all know that. I hope we know that. You know, recovery is possible. You can have a very fulfilling life, but he's been treatment resistant. And so his recovery road has not been straight at all. It's been more like a roller coaster with no seatbelt. So it's really hard as a mom, as a parent, to watch your child suffer and not be able to help or feel like you're not really helping. That's really hard. And I'm naturally kind of an optimistic, positive person, which is good under the circumstances. But even I would have times where I was so discouraged after, you know, promising treatment, and then that promise went away. Just feeling that joy and hope snatched away is very hard in a situation like that. So I remember once just feeling numb is the only word for it, just so stuck, and even doubting the goodness of God, which is not a good feeling, and wondering at the point of suffering. You know, I remember kind of saying to God, I know that suffering can help. I understand that it can be beneficial for me and for my son, but after a while, it starts to feel gratuitous. Like, okay, we've suffered. I understand, we've benefited. It starts to feel like just too much. And so that's a hard place to be. That was hard, obviously, for him and for me and people who cared about him. So it's just been a hard road, and a few things have helped me. Like Don, I'll echo Bill, has been a big help and support because he's very loving and supportive, and he's good to my son, which helps a lot, and he helps with him. Also, I found NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I helped to build it up again in our city. So now we have a really active chapter, that mutual support of people going through something you are. It's kind of like AA, except it's for mental health. And some of you know how helpful AA or Al-Anon can be. And that's exactly what it's like, except it's for mental health. And so that's helped me a lot. You know, just that first time sharing in a group of what we were dealing with and realizing other people were too, other family members were too. And it was just such a relief. And to feel that love and support in the room without any judgment or shame or stigma, right? And the third thing that's really helped me is practicing gratitude. And you have to do it even when things are going well, because you need to build that reservoir of resilience by doing it. So you'll be ready when the next thing happens, right? When the next crisis comes. And so my gratitude practice, one of them, it sounds a little cheesy, but I can tell you it works, you know. Every Sunday, and well, sometimes I don't do it. I'll skip it, I'll admit it. But most Sundays in the evening, I write on a little piece of paper. I reflect over the week, which is good, and think about some good things that happen, even small things, you know, seeing a cardinal in the window, a friend calling, small things, large things. I write them on a piece of paper with a date. I fold that paper up and I put it in a jar. And I keep doing that every Sunday. And then on New Year's Eve, I dump the jar out on the carpet and I start picking them up and I start reading them and I review my whole year that way. And I look back over it and see all the good things I'd forgotten about that had happened that year. And then I'd gather all those papers up, put them in an envelope and mark them like 2020. And I'm keeping all those. And then I start to practice again. And it's really helped because we forget. Isn't it funny how we forget the seemingly inconsequential things that happen, but that really give us a boost? And it really does your spirit good to look over that and to reflect on that and to be reminded of what happened over the course of a year. So that's one gratitude practice that might interest you. It's pretty easy. You just need a piece of paper and some kind of jar and you put it in there. So
it's fun too. It's fun for me when she dumps it out and reads them out loud. And, you know, yeah, I remember the stuff that she's talking about. And I'm kind of cynical and cranky, and I teased her about it at first, but now I really like it. I don't do it myself though, but I should start.
That's awesome. Thank you, Margie.
I think that's a wonderful thing to do, because I think sometimes we get so busy with our own life, living it and our thoughts, that we forget how many lives we've touched and how grateful they are that we're alive. And it just kind of, we thank them and it just is kind of over. So I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kay. You know, I mean, we've said this from the beginning, but you hear kind of in what folks have shared the past couple weeks, it's not a denial of suffering. It's not this rose-colored glasses view of the world. It's, you know, truly grateful people that we encounter are those who have walked through really dark valleys. And so, you know, this gratitude thing isn't for the faint of heart. It's really not. So thanks, Margie. Okay. Well, if we can share the little quote unquote handout on the screen there, and we'll just kind of walk through it now. First week, we talked about gratitude, kind of the psychological foundations and how gratitude reorganizes or recognizes our thought processes, that things happen organically and biologically to us, like almost like we're created, that when we participate in gratitude, we become physically healthier people, psychologically healthier people. And then we talked about how those theological implications, about how we looked at kind of the reciprocity in the life of the inner life of the Trinity, you know, just boiling up with love and overflowing. And that's how creation happens, and it returns, and that cyclical pattern, and how gratitude can act like that, how we image the Trinitarian life that way, you know, by being in this constant cycle of gratitude, gratefulness. And last week we talked about, I just went blank. My gosh, what did we talk about last week? It's a B word, I know that, because they're all B words, belonging. And how participating in gratitude expands our sense of belonging, like both in the household of creation and then in the households of our communities, whether they be faith communities or more. And so today we're going to talk about beholding, and how beholding, seeing others with the eyes of love and resurrection, how that expands and deepens our sense of gratefulness and gratitude in our lives. And just like last week, we're going to kind of meander our way through this, and I'll stop and just want to hear your feedback and your thoughts and what resonates with you. And so first we open up with a poem from Rilke. I know that nothing has ever been real without my beholding it. All becoming has needed me. My looking ripens things, and they come toward me to meet and be met. I'll read it one more time. I know that nothing has ever been real without my beholding it. All becoming has needed me. My looking ripens things, and they come toward me to meet and be met. I just love that little sliver of ripens. my looking ripens things. Is this the way we look and our attention to things ripens, matures, or brings to some kind of completeness, or develops flavor and texture. There's something about just us looking at something, paying attention to something, really seeing it, that it changes. There's a relationship there, that our looking changes what we're looking at in some way. There's a book by Charles Dickens, Bleak House. And in that book, there is a character named Esther Summerson, who is an orphan at first. And then she is taken under the wing, so to speak, of a cruel, kind of harsh aunt, who then dies. And then she is then cared for by a man named Mr. Jardinus, who has kind of an endless supply of wealth. And he's a very loving man, wants to take care of her and others, has a difficult time showing feeling and emotion. I mean, it's Victorian England, by the way, so that shouldn't surprise us. But he is a kind-hearted man, and cares for her and provides a sanctuary and a place for her to grow out of childhood into young womanhood. And there's a point in the book where she writes, or she says, "From my childhood, I've been the object of the untiring goodness of the best of human beings, to whom I am so bound by every tie of attachment, gratitude, and love, that nothing I could do in the compass of a life could express the feelings of a single day." And I just love that phrase, "I have been the object of the untiring goodness of the best of human beings." So with those two, that Rilke quote, that sliver of his poem, and Esther Summerson talking about being the object of untiring goodness, think about the people in your life. And we'll just take a beat here. And I want y'all to share about a person in whom you've been the object of untiring goodness. And this could be someone past or present. So just let's think for a bit, and I'd love to hear, and y'all share some stories if you don't mind.
When I was 6 years old, we moved in April from Idaho to Iowa, and Idaho had no kindergarten, and where we moved in Iowa did. And so I entered kindergarten rather late in the year. And there was a girl in my class who just came over and befriended me that first day, which was up to the point she came over was a horrible day. I didn't understand why my mother was dropping me off and, what was going on. And I was in this room of complete strangers. But she has been an important presence in my life ever since.
Ever since kindergarten, Mildred?
Yeah, which is quite a long time ago.
Wow, that's awesome. Damn.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Does she still live in, you say, Iowa?
Yeah, yes, she still lives in Iowa, and so we visit in person on occasion. It's been quite a while now, but mainly we visit by phone. And she thinks I'm great, and I think she's great, and I think we become better people because of that.
Yeah, good. I think others think you're pretty great on this Zoom call here too, Mildred, just throwing that out there. Somebody else, person in your life that in whom you've known you've been the object of untiring goodness.
I'll go.
Okay.
I've had a couple of cases that were kind of, as I look back on it as an adult, it was kind of surprising. One was an English teacher in Perryton. So throughout high school, I wasn't fitting in well with the rodeo club crowd, I guess you might say. And so I was a little isolated, and I really wasn't. I mean, I probably should have joined the artsy fartsy club like you did, but I didn't even seem to find my way to that club. So anyway, so this English teacher, some of you know this story. His name is John Hickey, and we called him Father, as if he were a priest, and he called us brother and sister in the classroom. And he was eccentric, and he lived in this little small apartment behind these people's house, and he never had a telephone. He never had a TV. And I would go over and we would have herbal tea and listen to his Dragon cassette deck, which was a very high-end cassette deck back in the day. And it was, you know, we would listen to classical music and just talk. And anyway, so just looking back, it's like, you know, why would he bother to sort of befriend me, right? I mean, but he did. And I had a similar experience with a professor as an undergrad. I was so fortunate to become really close friends with these people, and they kind of looked after me. But anyway, he did become a Catholic priest after he retired at the age of 63. And we continued to have a friendship until he died a few years ago. So looking back as an older person, I'm even more blown away. I didn't appreciate it at the time. You know, I mean, I was grateful on some level, but looking back on it, I'm really blown away at the fact that they cared so much and made the effort to connect with me, you know, and the things I was going through. And so I will always be deeply grateful for that, and kind of surprised in a sense.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Alan.
Sure.
Yeah. Took me getting to college to figure out that the rodeo guys and the artsy fartsy guys can hang out together as long as you match them beer for beer.
Wasn't exactly the case in Perryton, Texas.
I can share. This is Barbara. So from my childhood, I've been the object of the untiring goodness of my siblings, my older siblings. I was the youngest of 4, and my siblings were always so nice to me and so protective of me. And even though they fought with each other, they never fought with me. And I think in our adulthood, we've all had special relationships with each other. And now 2 of them are deceased. And, but I really think I've been extremely fortunate in that sense to have such amazing relationships with my siblings.
That's great. Thanks, Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
Reverend, I got it. I don't know if it's interesting or not, but I think we all agree that, you know, God, Jesus is at the top of the spectrum, but below that, I think comes mothers, at least my mother. And as I get older with kids and grandkids, and I see the challenges of the world with these young kids right now, rehab and on and on and on, and just everybody. It's just amazing how many times, no matter what happens, the mothers are always there, and they're always so non-judgmental. And I'm just thank God for mothers, especially.
Mm-hmm. What was your mom's name, Dick?
Dorothy Ford.
Dorothy.
For short, and she was a Yankee, and Daddy was a Texan. Like one time, does that?
I just.
She was a school teacher, and loved her job and loved her kids, and believe me, I introduced her to Valium years ago, and anyway, because of all that, she was always, I mean, she never punted me. No matter what I did, she was always there and willing to take me back. And our really, really appreciate. And I've seen that with other mothers as I've gotten older, and
Sure.
not the best kids, shall I say, but the mothers always take them back. And I just think that that's I raised cattle for 30 years, and it's just amazing how a cow treats his calf. And I think that I don't know, God did something there kind of unique, and I just think it's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing, Dick.
Yeah. Can I take a slightly different angle on it? I'm not thinking of any one person like that, but there's been so many, just this rich tapestry of people that have been good to me. And, I look at this call, for example, and, see so many faces that I can think of good kindness that has come from so many of you. So, that inspires a lot of gratitude in me for sure.
No, that's great. Thanks, Jackie. And you're right. That's what it does. I mean, I think once we think about one person, whether it's our mother or a school teacher or a sibling or whoever, and we start to kind of step back, I think we do see the tapestry. I think we do start thinking, well, this person at this point in my life, in this season of my life, I mean, it unfolds like that. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
I want to mention my first cousin once removed and my great aunt. My brother and I were the probably fourth generation of our family in our town in Tennessee, right down the mountain from Swanee. And no other grandchildren, we were the only children in that generation. So we were just loved by we had tons of great aunts and uncles, and they just loved us to death. But particularly this first cousin once removed, she lived down the street, down the block across the street. She was my first grade teacher. And also my great aunt was one just like her. They just were so welcoming to me and my brother, always. And it wasn't until when I went to tell him I was married, my cousin just was thrilled for me. And my great aunt, there was just a little bit of hesitation, and then she was so happy. But in doing the family history, it made me look back on their lives. Both of them stayed in the family home, took care of their parents. My great aunt didn't have a choice. Her daddy would not let her marry. She was to stay and take care of the second wife and those 4 children, and the second wife, and she did have an opportunity to marry, but he would not let her. And both of those, by their lives, showed me that you choose to be happy, because that's what their lives were. They were filled with happiness, but they had to make that choice inside them. And it wasn't until I was older before I realized that was a significant choice for them to make.
Yeah. Thank you, Kay. Thanks for sharing that. I really love hearing these stories. I'm convinced that we enter more deeply into gratitude and a lifestyle of gratefulness, not by y'all listening to me talk about gratitude and the theory of gratitude. And, I think, sure, that's a part of it, but I think we all enter more deeply into it by hearing one another's stories. What Margie shared, what Susan has shared, and Mildred, what Kay just shared, hearing about Dick's mom or, Barbara. That's hearing those stories. That's what allows all of us to kind of enter more deeply into our own lives. So I appreciate y'all sharing, really do. Well, let's continue on to that next quote there. And this is from David Steindl-Rast. And he writes, in the case of Jesus, it's clear, if you look at the Gospels, not at what we teach about Jesus, but at his teaching, that he is a savior in another sense. The essential point in his life, long before he dies on the cross, is that he affirms the value of every human being. He affirms the value of every human being as a human being, and in that way saves them. By saving their self-respect, by making them stand on their own 2 feet, and pulling them out of that consensus reality that their society had formed, and that, sadly, hasn't changed very much in our society. What sticks out to you in that quote? What grabs your attention?
That grabs me. I love it when somebody smart who writes books says things that I've thought but not said. You know, I have often been impatient. Every church I've ever been in, before I was an Episcopalian, I was a Presbyterian and a Methodist, and we always said the creed. Mm-hmm. The creed always went from the virgin birth to dying on the cross, and totally ignored Jesus' life. I've had many periods in my life when I have doubted the importance or the validity of the idea of Jesus redeeming us from our sins by dying on the cross. But I've never had a moment when I didn't agree with what he taught. We need to be kind to one another. Each one of us is just as valuable as the next one. And we need to behave that way. I think what Jesus' life taught us, that calls us to be what is supposed to be Christian.
Thank you, Susan. And I can identify with what you're saying in regard to the creed. You know, there's an Eastern Orthodox Christian history scholar, church history scholar. He's died several years ago. His name was Yaroslav Pelikan. He taught at Yale. And he has this book called Creed, and he gathered all the versions of the Nicene Creed around the world in different cultures. And the one from the Swahili culture, they talk about, they expand the ministry of Jesus. They talk about how Jesus went out on safari and fed the poor and took care of the needy. And then it said, and then he went down into the earth, but the hyenas could not touch him. Isn't that a cool? But there are different cultures who kind of bring out the ministry of Jesus in their creedal statements. So thanks for sharing that, Susan. Somebody else, what grabs you in that David Steindl-Rast quote?
Well, one thing that grabs me is that in the center middle of the quote, it reminds me of our baptismal covenant, where we respect the dignity of every human being. And it, you know, so the reason we do that is because Jesus did that, and we're following him. So.
Thanks, Susan.
I've started reading the Book of Joy by, Abram is the person who actually wrote it, but it's taking a lot from a meeting between Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And this idea of the value of every human being and relating to every human with compassion is very, very much at the center of their striving for joy.
I'm glad you mentioned Archbishop Desmond Tutu. He's been in conversation with several of us up here, and I think his work in reconciliation is very important for the church to be looking at. Mama Jo has some great ideas of some books and something this is just kind of a teaser, but I'm glad you mentioned that, Deacon Mildred, because I think he may be appearing more and more on the horizon in the life of St. Andrews. So, not in person. Well, I appreciate y'all responding to that. Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that y'all have said. What grabs me especially is this reminds me of the way Jesus looked at people, that he wasn't drawn to what his culture deemed attractive, holy, or appropriate. But it seemed that when he looked at people, they became holy. They became a part of something. And I think right now in our culture, in our world, it's hard to really look at some things and see dignity in it, which is why this isn't for the faint of heart. But maybe there's ways we can look at people and things that we even disagree with and have a difficult time with, and find a kernel, even if it's just a kernel there, that we can affirm, at least that they're a child of God. It's important. Okay, we'll continue along. Paul says, our life is hidden with Christ in God, but that implies that Christ's life is hidden in God. God's presence is everywhere. Still, it is a hidden presence. Resurrection is not revivification. It is not survival. It is not a matter of saying, there he is. It is a hidden reality, but it is a reality we can live in the strength of its power. And that's all we need to know about the resurrection. Resurrection is not revivification. It is not survival. It is not a matter of saying, there he or she is. It is a hidden reality, but it is a reality, and we can live in the strength of its power. What do y'all hear in that, especially considering, Episcopalians, we love to call one another a resurrection people. A resurrection people. So keeping that in mind, we're a resurrection people, and then reading what David Steindl-Rast is saying about resurrection here. What do you think? Where does your mind and heart go in that?
That we don't have to stay mired in some kind of fallenness, like we're not worthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
I think that we experience resurrection each day when we decide we're going to do God's will and not our own.
Thanks, Edie.
I like the part that says, live in the strength of its power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why do you like that, Kay?
Because I think we're all challenged in life, and sometimes we're afraid. But then if we stop and think that, be not afraid, I am with you. Mm-hmm. I remember, this is not a major thing, but I was driving to Tennessee, and the weather we were in Arkansas, and the roads were pretty bad. And I kept following all these big trucks that seemed to line up on I-40. And I kept thinking, it's really dangerous, but I can still see their taillights. But maybe we should pull off, maybe we shouldn't. I didn't know exactly what to do. And came around to Bend, and there was this huge big billboard of Jesus, and it said, fear not, I am with you. And there was just kind of a calmness that came over me for the rest of the drive. And we just made it through just fine. And I've tried to remember that when there have been times when you don't really know how you're going to get through the day, just fear not, I am with you. Mm-hmm. And I have had things bigger in my life than an icy street.
Oh, sure. I'm sure you have. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I would like to think that I would have been one of the people who immediately recognized the risen Christ, but I worry sometimes that I would have been scoffing or doubtful. And so for me, it's a real push-pull always in life. Mm-hmm. Really understand and recognize that, because sometimes I'm a doubter.
Sure, sure. Yeah. I worry every time I read a gospel story involving a scribe or a Pharisee or a Sadducee, and then I'm up there in my priestly vestments and I'm reading this and I'm going, damn it, that's me.
Yep.
It's me trying to put God in a box.
Father Jared, this quotation from David seems to be in conflict with the first quotation that you cited at the start of this, that
right,
if you don't behold it, it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's hidden, do you behold it? Your presence of Christ is hidden within us. So is it a reality?
What do you think?
Well, I think that the life of Christ is manifest in everything. And so it is beholden. It's not a secret. And therefore it is a reality. You don't have to see it to believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, David. What do other people think about what David drew out? And let's thank David and be grateful, because an engineer would find this between these two quotes. So I'm grateful that God made us all different. But what do we think about what David just said? Other responses? Is there a kind of, tension or difference between our need to look and this hiddenness?
Well, I kind of felt that tension at first, but I made it work for me by thinking it's a hidden reality just because it's not in your face, except for that billboard. But it's not like God has a little, arrow. I'm here. Oh, and I'm here too. And I'm over there. And I'm over there. So it's a hidden reality because God doesn't want to make us choose him. It's still our option. And that, I think that's part of that. We have to look for it. And then once we find it, then it's everywhere. But
yeah. Thanks, Marietta.
Well, I would, if I can offer something here.
Go for it.
The thing that struck me is, as we read about the reality, the hidden reality, is for me, that's where faith comes in, and we accept Christ. We accept Christ as an example of a way of life, that which we are called to do, but at so many points in life, and as we attempt to understand all there is about God and creation and the life of Christ and what we're called to do and discipleship, et cetera, there's so much to it that one may well feel, well, I just don't know what to do with all of it. And I think that's where my faith comes in, and I simply accept. I don't have to understand or even believe that I can understand the manifold secret, call them secrets, or just lack of understanding. And I've just kind of back away from them without leaving questioning behind or trying to understand, but at least allow just to accept it by faith.
Yeah. Thank you, Cliff.
And let me forward it to them.
Thanks for sharing that. Appreciate y'all's responses. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the gifts of being an Episcopalian, an inheritor of the Anglican tradition, and kind of the way of seeing things, is we're a both and people, and I think there's something very much that's very much part of just kind of the reality of creation and nature and human nature and all the rest, is that, you know, for instance, with this, what David pointed out is, I would agree, you know, 100% Christ is manifest. Resurrection is manifest in things. We see that. And then I also think there is something hidden about it as well. It's both and like kind of what Margie was talking about, sharing her story. There was a season in which she didn't even think God was present there. And so I think it's both and. I think there are moments in our life where we're able to see, you know, the green shoot coming from the concrete a little more clearly than other moments. You know, which is why it's important to develop that sense of gratitude. Well, I hope this has made sense. This idea that what deepens our gratitude is knowing that we are the object of untiring goodness. We're the object of someone beholding us, and have been throughout our life. Different people throughout our journey and our story have beheld us. We've been an object of their goodness. And also, we are the ones beholding other people. We are the ones beholding acts of love and resurrection on a daily basis, and placing ourselves in a kind of posture to be surprised by those. I think it was Plato that said, you know, the beginning of philosophy is surprise. I think in a lot of ways, and I think David Steindl-Rast even talks about this somewhere, one of his books, is surprise is the beginning of gratitude. You know, putting yourself in a posture to walk out your door or to enter into your day in a posture to be surprised that, oh, this person is beholding me, or look what I'm doing. Look what I'm looking at right now. What is this? Why am I looking at this? I'm going to keep looking at it because there's something in me looking at it that's ripening this. You know, it's putting me in this present moment to be grateful. So any final thoughts or questions before I share the kind of the question I want everybody to kind of take with them this week?
I just want to comment, you know, reality is kind of an interesting word. And to me, I've always felt that one's perception affects their reality. So reality, you know, may or may not be the same thing to everybody, but your perception of reality is in fact your reality. Mm-hmm. So I think that the perception we have and how we look at things, in my mind, affects our reality. And absolutely. And so anyway, so my perception is, you know, kind of like Cliff was, I don't have to know everything. I have a lot of faith. Yeah. And you don't have to be smart like a lot of you people. You just have to have a lot of faith. So my perception is that God's good, and I'm glad he's around.
That's awesome, Dick.
What I'd like to add this, what you just said about, I have my book here, and what you just said about surprise being, I read something in here that might be what you're referring to. Shall I read it?
Please. Yeah, you bet.
Where do we find limitless belonging? You may have felt it on a mountaintop or when listening to music, but you may just as likely have been surprised by it when you were stuck in rush hour traffic or changing your baby's diapers. Whenever it hits us, we know this is it. This is the answer, as it were, to a question we keep carrying around with us, unable to put it into words and unable to drop it. We may not be able to put the answer into words either. Who can put the meaning of a sunrise into words? But we can rest in it. We have come home. We have found meaning.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that, for reading that. Sure. And I heard a big heart behind all that cynicism you were talking about earlier.
We Nethertons cry easily.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I just have one thing that I wanted to say too, and that is when my husband died about 7 years ago, I went on a journey about resurrection because I'm like, okay, well, where is he? I was I went through all those emotions. I was angry, and you know, what is this mortality stuff? What were you thinking, God, to have people die, honestly? And so, and I went on a pretty long journey, but where I actually ended up was hidden. He is hidden with Christ in God. And that's where we all are. And that's been so comforting to me. And I love those words.
Mm-hmm.
But that understanding resurrection, it's one thing to just kind of think about it in a kind of an intellectual way. And it's another thing when they're the actual people that you actually love with flesh on them, and they're not there anymore. And it's tough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Susan, for sharing that. Yeah, hidden with Christ. So I mean, that was what you held on to there. I mean, because you're so right. Hidden doesn't mean like hide and seek, like I'm trying to keep something from you. I mean, hidden is in like, Corrie ten Boom, the hiding place, right? It's a place of sanctuary and safety, Yeah. And Dick, I didn't get to respond to what you said earlier, but I think those are words your mama would be proud of, what you said. Okay. Well, here's a question. You guys bounce around in your brains and your hearts this week. Where are you currently beholding salvation and resurrection? And salvation, not in, the quote unquote, evangelical sense of the term, but the way that David Steindl-Rast talked about salvation, affirming the value of people, seeing something in them that affirms their dignity. Where are you seeing that happen? Where are you seeing that kind of salvation and resurrection in the way that Steindl-Rast talks about resurrection? Where are y'all seeing that? Because I believe it's happening, even though there's plenty of folks around who say it's not, but it's there. Oh, okay.
We're meeting next week.
So great question, Kay. We're not meeting next week because we're going to have our annual meeting during this hour. So we'll do annual meeting next week, but we'll meet the week after that. And that'll be our last lesson on gratitude. And then the week after that, we'll talk about with Margie and Susan and some other folks, what's coming up and what we can anticipate during the season of Lent. So that's kind of how it's going to play out. Okay. All right. Well, I sure do appreciate y'all. Let me go ahead and read that prayer again. I shared with y'all a couple of weeks ago that I found in the back of my Book of Common Prayer that was given to me. And I forgot to share this part of the story. When we first moved here, Mindy Jackson was our realtor. And after we closed on our house, she sent us a nice little sweet note. And she said, I don't know if you've ever heard this prayer, but this is one of my favorite prayers, and it's seen me through a lot of tough times. And guess what? It was that same prayer that was taped in the back of my Book of Common Prayer there. So I thought that was kind of neat. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Do not fear the changes of life. God, whose very own you are, will deliver you out of them. He has kept you hitherto, and he will lead you safely through all things. And when you cannot stand it, God will bear you in his arms. Do not be afraid of what may happen tomorrow. The same everlasting Father who cares for you today will care for you then and every day. He will either shield you from suffering or give you unfailing strength to bear it. Be at peace and put aside anxious thoughts and imaginations. Amen.
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 All right, so good to see your faces and hear your voices. I don't know if you got to see the announcements, but Deacon Courtney is about to come on in, I think, about 5 minutes. And if you want to be walked through how we're going to do annual meeting next week, I encourage you to stay on this call. You don't need to go to another Zoom call. It's going to be on this one. And she's going to walk us through all that. So feel free to hang out. I'm going to go get some more coffee, and I'll be back. So, all right. Courtney, are you already on this call?
Hi, y'all.
Yes, I am.
All right. Good deal. Well, is there anything? I'll just turn it over to you at this point in case you want to begin to prep folks. Is that okay with you?
That sounds great.
Okay.
The remainder of this meeting is for the folks who would like a little help with Zoom or would like a preview of how we're going to vote in the annual meeting. So anyone who would like to stay, that's great. But if you need to go, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. I will tell you that we have a bunch of people signed on right now as tech support, and there's a phone number. And we just found out our first thing that we needed to know from this meeting, which is that our company who services our phones turns them off on the weekends. So you cannot call to get help this morning. So this meeting may be a little longer than I had hoped because we're going to have to address the questions in here, I think. They're busily working on fixing that right now. Right now, they go straight to voicemail. So if you have a question, you may just have to ask it.
Courtney, can I just, I'm hosting this, I just hit end and leave meeting, you'll be okay.
Margie, I'm getting a really bad echo, but my assumption is that you're the host, is what I think I'm hearing. Somebody, one of these tech support folks is host right now. I'm not sure who, but I'm going to try to get host. Can you make me the host?
Sure.
I think we've got 4 or 5 people signed on as St. Andrews.
Mm-hmm. Which one are you?
I'm help at 376-6316, which will just go to voicemail and frustrate you if you try to get help that way right now.
I'm going to leave and come back in, so I won't be a host.
This one? We have 3 tech supports.
I'm the one that says help.
Who's?
I'm going to change it to my name.
Here it is. Okay, got it. Okay. We got it.
Great, I've got it now. Thank you. Thank you. All right, good morning, everybody that's left. I appreciate you guys being here. Actually, it's afternoon now, so good afternoon, everybody. I am going to close my door because I can hear like 4 or 5 instances of myself going down the hall right now, so let me. Oh, okay. Yeah, it was a little trippy. I was hearing myself like in stereo as as the signal traveled down the hall. What we're going to use this time for is just to kind of look at the technology that's needed to do what we need to do for the annual meeting. And so I have 4 objectives for that. One of them is that everyone is able to get onto Zoom. And since I am seeing your faces for the most part, I think that you've been able to get on Zoom. So we may have actually accomplished that objective already. If anyone has any questions about Zoom, why don't we do this? My tech support people, will you change your names to your personal phone numbers since our phones up here aren't working? And while they're doing that, the second objective that I have for this morning is I'd like for us to get a preview of the meeting packet, and I'd like to show you where you can find that stuff. The third objective that I have is I want us to do a practice vote so that not only can you see what it takes to vote, but I can see what problems we're going to have on the front end. So this meeting is as much for me to figure out what issues we have as it is to help you get ready for the meeting. So, and we've already figured out one of those issues, which is, wow, the phones. So at this point, I think there are a few folks who are tech support who have their own phone number on the screen. And that's going to be Miriam, and that's going to be Tammy, and that's going to be Sammy and Shannon. I think that actually tech support is taking up too much space. If you guys will change it to help, that will probably help. So if you guys see one of those that says help and then has a phone number and you have a question that I haven't addressed, just pop on over to that. And I'm actually going to stop the recording of this meeting so that we don't have an ultra long formation recording.